I always love having a chat with you.
It's like, I'm not an expert. We do have a dating app. Imagine there was never sex. Someone was like, you know what? I invented sex. If it starts off good, it's way better than starting off good on a dating app. Then you have to translate that to real life.
That revolving door of like, I don't know, what do you want to do? Or we should go out sometime. Although it was a pretty fucking good first date.
The app is now national from 12 cities. We're going back to the basics to make a first date really organic and make it real again.
Let's get into it. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Welcome back to First Rounds on Me podcast, brought to you by the dating app that connects you from screen to scene. First Rounds on Me. I'm Joe Feminella with my beautiful wife, Hannah, and we're the hosts of today's conversations. Who do we have today, babe?
My darling, today is just us.
No way.
Yeah, I know, crazy, right? Well, you see, in a recent episode, we touched on the highs and lows of working with your professional partner, which was a really fun episode. But I think it's time for our listeners to get a deeper look and really understand the heart of First Rounds on Me. We'll dive into how you came up with the app's concept, the key features that set it apart, and our personal favorites. Plus, we'll get some expert analysis on dating app fatigue, the impact it's having on mental health, revisit our own dating frustrations, and how our very own love story surprisingly mirrored the journey of this developing app. We'll also explore the issues and history of dating apps as a whole and how how those experiences led to the creation of First Rounds on Me. Let's get into it.
I'm excited.
Me too. I always love having a chat with you.
It's like First Rounds on Me story, dating app story, our story, and how it all comes together.
All rolled into one. So before we dive into First Rounds on Me and how you created the app, how you came up with the concept, et cetera, I want to talk about the inception of dating apps and how they've gotten to the place that they are today. So do you know what the first dating app that was ever brought to market was?
I think I know what you're going to say, and I think if you research it, you think you're right, but you're probably not. You're going to say Match probably, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and I think there was an app before Match, and I don't know what it is.
Well, Match wasn't an app. It was an online website.
Yeah, I think there was one before that. Because what year was that?
1995.
Okay, so maybe it was Match. Yeah.
In any case, let me speak. So in 1995, Match.com came about, and it was revolutionary in the sense that it was, you create a profile and you can meet all these strangers. And it was met, I think, initially with a lot of hesitance and criticism almost, because we had been brought up to go, don't meet strangers on the internet, and now this platform had been created to be able to do something like that. And then as we continued on in 2000, eHarmony came to market, and that was more targeted towards people who were looking for serious marriage term kind of relationships. And then OkCupid came about in 2003, and then the first mobile app to hit the market was
Tinder.
Yes, 2012. And then in quick succession, it was Bumble in 2014, and then Hinge in 2015. And then from there was just a plethora of niche apps, including First Rounds on Me. So as I was doing research on it, and I was reading all these articles and I was doing all these things, it seems like the apps in particular were initially celebrated for democratizing dating, basically. The stigma had really kind of been drawn away from it a little bit. And it was very commonplace for people to go online and start looking for strangers to meet, right? But I think as the time went past and it became a normalcy, the constant cycle of matching, chatting, and often being ghosted was emotionally exhausting for people. And people started developing what is a legitimate term now, which is called dating app fatigue.
Why don't we bring it all the way back to Match? And
okay.
Yeah, I feel like that was a great history of
Thank you.
1996, 1995 until present day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just my assumption, right? I'm not an expert, even though we do have a dating app.
I feel like you can pretty much call yourself an expert.
Yeah, but this is just my assumption.
Okay.
Because you don't want to pigeonhole people or companies or groups.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when Match came about and eHarmony came about, I don't even think it was stigmatized. I think it was just hidden in a way for a certain group of people. And those people picture and this is no diss on them or this type of person.
No shade to anybody.
But, picture that person in a cubicle working a 9 to 5 and, you have a lot of downtime when you're doing one of those jobs and they're scrolling on eHarmony on Match because maybe they're a little socially awkward and not confident enough to date the way that we used to date in the 90s, where it was, you had to be really outgoing, put yourself out there. And I feel like those people kind of hid it. And because I saw this happen. I used to have the cubicle job, and there was this lovely lady who I worked with. She was probably in her 40s, and I think she actually had an eHarmony account. And I thought, oh wow, I thought that was for old people who were like, I don't even know what I thought it was. I was like, why are you online trying to meet somebody? And I felt bad for her, but yeah, she was like, this is how I meet people, and she's like excited to go on this date. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. So I associated with like that type of person that just kind of hid it to just make themselves feel like, okay, this is the only way I could really meet somebody, which I thought was an amazing tool as I know and understand dating apps now.
Well, I think what you just said is really interesting, and it was like shrouded in secrecy almost. It wasn't something that you told almost like the people in your life or just random people that you met, like I'm on one of these dating websites. There was, like I said, there was like this stigma that was attached to it, which is not there today at all.
Yeah, and I think the stigma kind of evolved because then more and more people were on these websites, and then the websites turned to apps. And the first app, as you said, was Tinder. And what year did Tinder start? 2012?
2012, I believe.
Yeah, so when Tinder started in 2012, I was 22. And if you heard one of your friends was on Tinder, you thought, oh, not that you're a loser, but what's wrong with you? Why are you using a dating app to meet somebody? And that's where the stigma kind of evolved but got more popular. And then that's when all the apps started coming. And I feel like now it's normal. And I don't know if we're going to go through that journey if you have some of those questions.
Oh, heck yeah.
But yeah, when Tinder came about and then Bumble and then Hinge, it was more common to meet somebody on those apps than in real life. And I'm sure we'll get into my story on how this all came about for me. But yeah, it was just fascinating from 1995 until, say, 2015, the evolution of dating just changed. And prior to that, dating had probably been the same for thousands of years, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about a lot of life within the last like 20 years, it's shifted so dramatically, and while we can't be naive to think that dating wouldn't be included in that, you know? You said something interesting, and like I said, we will go into like your full-on founder story and how you kind of came up with the concept and what your own personal grievances were and how it led that to you. But I think to talk about the dating app fatigue just in general is good now, because it is one of those things. You said this evolution, and now it's become so normalized that people meet people on dating apps. And for a while, like, it was a really fresh, fun feeling. People are like, oh my God, it's so nice to be able to have all of these options. And like, I remember when I was on the apps, I would literally have 50 or 60 messages and matches with people. And at first it was like, oh, that's nice. And that's like a nice self-gratification. But then very quickly did it become dull. Very quickly did it kind of like start to lose its joy, because you realized that it wasn't actually about meeting, connecting with people. It was more so like a numbers game, and it was more so instant gratification versus like legitimate gratification. And so I was doing a whole bunch of research and actually pulled things from like different dating apps. But Hinge did a survey saying that 71% of their users, 71% of their users, which is an enormous, staggering number, feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of messages that come towards them, and they then become kind of disillusioned with what's going on. So what's your take on the dating app market as a whole kind of contributing to that?
Well, I think it's a combination of the dating app market and technology. In the same era of the 90s and the early 2000s, that's when technology, AOL, MSN, Google, and as humans, because technology was like the only industry that kept growing faster than like time. Like it was like, okay, year one it grew, but year two it grew faster, and year three it grew faster than year one and two combined. And like it just kept growing too fast. And I think the people who invented Tinder are brilliant. Like what an amazing concept. Same thing with like Instagram or Facebook. Like what an amazing concept to give people the tool to connect and have more options. But I think like Instagram, like Facebook, like Tinder, there needed to be like a rule book or like an instruction manual. Is like, okay, how are you supposed to use this? And I know we always talk about this joke that I have where it's like, imagine there was never sex. And then one day someone was like, you know what? I invented sex, and you told 7 billion people, hey, you guys can now have sex. Think about how that would go. People would not know how to act appropriately. They would not know what their emotions meant. They would just be like, what is this? And it would probably lead to a lot of issues, a lot of anxiety, a lot of physical issues, because it's something that you're just introducing to the whole world without an evolution. Like the evolution of dating, the evolution of intimacy, that has happened over thousands and thousands of years. And thankfully today we're like learning how to make it better and better. Dating apps happened overnight. So it was like, here you go. And imagine introducing one thing to the whole world without having to like
having any guidelines or
well,
boundaries.
but it's also like if you build a business, it's slow and steady and like it's introduced to certain people and you know, you learn over time with technology and the fact that it's an app and everybody had a phone already, everybody could download it right away. So there was no like growth phase. It was just here you go.
And I think it was introducing it to, you know, as you said, a wide mass of human beings that you're left to your own devices, and that is a beautiful thing, autonomy and being able to live your life the way that you want to. But when you don't have those boundaries, those rules, it ends up becoming more of a chore than it does a joyful experience.
Yeah, there's also a study that says if you spend more than 15 minutes on a dating app, your mind has gone elsewhere. And if you connect with people, it's kind of a waste of your time because back to biology and being a human being, like our brains are only geared to connect with so many people and do so many things at a certain amount of time. And I even caught myself doing that. Like growing up, I was very into the idea of connecting with people, especially like, you know, girls when I was younger and like women as I got older and like seeing where that went, you know, getting to know them. And when I had to, you know, because when you're single, you kind of have to download a dating app. If that's where all the people are, you know, everybody eventually follows suit. And when I did it, I was like, damn, I'm really on here for validation. And I'm kind of comparing all these women to each other who I've never even met. And it was fucking with my brain. I was like, wait, I'm on a date with someone, but I just connected with somebody else. And then I had a date with somebody else yesterday. And I wonder who I'm going to connect with tomorrow. And it's literally the worst way that you could try and find someone you want to connect with.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's so beautifully open and honest of you to admit that, because I think if everybody peeled back the layers of their own like thought processes and like psyche and understanding of it, they would feel the exact same way. I was guilty of the same thing, going on dates with people and then being like, well, what about the date I'm going on tomorrow? You know what I mean? It's like there's the grass is greener effect is truly in swing, and the comparison culture that we exist within today is just compounded. All right. I want to take it all the way back. All the way. I've heard this story a bajillion times, but I still love hearing it every time because I think it's such a beautiful thing to know where the idea of the app came from. So first and foremost, how did you come up with the concept of the app, and what gap in the market did you kind of identify to then create it?
Yeah, so I think it even started before any idea of the app. It was my fascination with connecting with people. As you know, like I love meeting people, hearing their story.
You do.
Just because that's who I am as a person. And when I moved to New York City in 2016, this was 4 years now that Tinder and Bumble and I think Hinge had just started to become popular because I think Hinge had a really tough start and then started to become popular. And Hinge actually learned very well from Tinder and Bumble's struggles. But so I was 26 when I started to use them. And even me just adapting to them, I was like, whoa, this is a lot. And I was in New York City. And when I moved to New York City, I thought it was going to be so easy to meet people. You know, I love going out to bars. Like I said, I love talking to people. So I thought, I'm going to go to a bar every weekend. I'm going to talk to like all these girls and I'll probably connect with a lot of them and like see what happens. And as I started to go out, it was so isolating. I was so confused. I was like, okay, is it New York City? Is it me? Why is it so difficult to talk to all these people? And as I understood it a little more, it seemed like these both men and women were more comfortable meeting online when the pressure was off, like in their apartment, when they could be a little bit more confident and have the time to think about what they're going to do and the anxiety of
curated a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I followed suit and I downloaded all the apps and back to what we were saying earlier, the validation and this and that. But I still loved going on dates. So I would go on all these dates and my parents, as you know, met at a bar. My dad walked up to my mom and was like, I think he said, like, I want to buy you a drink and you haven't shut up. And, you know, can you finish your drink so I could buy you one? And she chugged the drink and he bought her one. And to me, it was like so real, right? Because he had no idea what he was getting himself into. And she obviously liked it. And it was like the whole courting phase and it was done in person. So like if it's done in person, it makes it, if it starts off good, it's way better than starting off good on a dating app because
Agreed.
it's like two different worlds. If you start off good on a dating app, then you have to translate that to real life. I'm rambling, but anyway.
You are, but that's okay.
So as I was going on dates with these women, I started to just ask them like, "Oh, this is crazy. Like, we're on dating apps. You know, how do you feel about them?" And like, "Oh, I hate dating apps." And I was like, "Oh, like, why are you on it then?" And like, "I don't know, there's no other way to meet people." And I was like, "Oh, all right, yes, I feel the same way." And this happened over months. And I was like, "Damn, every single solitary woman is saying the same exact thing. And I hate these apps. There has to be something that's missing here." So I was like, okay, me personally, I want a first date to be organic. Also, I know technology is moving so quickly. I'd worked in technology, and I was like, I have to figure out a way to like bridge this gap to make a first date really organic, but still like people love the gamification of the dating app.
And the ease and the convenience of it, yeah.
Yeah. So I had a friend, and the idea was actually different. The idea was supposed to be you would be in a bar and see someone that you were interested in and actually send them a drink from across the bar. And if they accepted, then it like gives you an opening to go say hello.
Is that where First Rounds on Me came from?
Well, the first name of the company was This Rounds on Me.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be like, say you're here and your family's in Australia and your sister's having a birthday party and you can't attend. You send her around on you, and it's like she doesn't even know, and it's like she has like this wallet and whatever. That was supposed to be the first.
It's a cute idea.
Yeah, well, maybe that will happen.
Copyrighted.
I just started to build the key differentiators in my head. Obviously, the gap in the market that I saw, and yeah. Long story short, that's where Fresh Rounds of Me came on, and I know we'll get into it deeper.
Oh, we will, don't you worry. What kind of... Well, I think it's important to talk about the differentiators first, and then we can kind of talk into like what you learnt from other dating apps, what not to do, what to do, etc. So can you explain to our listeners in detail what the 3 key differentiators are?
Yeah, so the reason I picked the key differentiators wasn't random. This was the feedback I was getting from what people wanted, right? My friends who were guys, the women who I was going on dates with. These were really thought out, curated differentiators. So the first one was when I would match with somebody, there was always this awkward moment when someone said, "Oh, I want to meet you in person," and then you're like, "Oh, I want to meet you too," and it's like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And then it was a back and forth of, "I don't know, what do you want to do?" Which eventually I realized I was too stupid at the time. That was a turnoff to women, and it never happened. Because think about it, like if you meet someone in real life, and you're like, "I want to go on a date with you," and you're just sitting back and forth going, "I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do?" It's like, all right, this is ridiculous.
Oh my God, mind-numbing.
So the first differentiator was like helping people actually have a plan and making that plan so seamless and informal, where it's like not being grand on a first date. You know, I was on so many grand first dates that went terrible, and it was like awkward because the date was so grand and because of waste of money. So the first key differentiator is giving the tools of picking a drink time and place and sending that as a first point of contact, which also shows initiative, where it's like, I actually want to meet you in real life, as opposed to just matching and going into the abyss of being compared to the other matches. So picking the drink time and place was that first key differentiator, and it was to put ease. Well, what are we going to do?
Yeah. Or like you said, and also the initiative on either gender or on either party that's in it. Like it does send a sense of chivalry from a fella, but it's also like a strength.
But how did you feel? Like, because there is an element of old schoolness to this app. If you did want to meet a guy and he didn't really have a plan, did it make it awkward?
That happens so many times. It didn't make it awkward. It just turned me off. Like I mean, I'm not a very awkward person. It's kind of hard for me to feel awkward, or for me to be in situations that feel awkward, right? But I would be on the dating apps, and then it would be that revolving door of like, I don't know, what do you want to do? Or we should go out sometime. And then it would end there. And I was just the type of person, and perhaps this is why I had so many matches, is because if they didn't initiate a date within the first day of talking, I was like, what the fuck's the point here? Like, I don't need another friend.
Yeah.
I don't need another pen pal. I don't need to sit there and chat with people. I've got plenty of friends that I can text with. So it was frustrating, especially as a woman, because you felt like there wasn't any initiative there.
And I think what you said, like, we should go out sometime, that's such a phrase that guys use, and I'm only saying guys because that's what I associate my knowledge of guys operating with dating apps. But to me, that means like, yeah, I think you're hot, and I'm going to try and maneuver this in a way where I could try and sleep with you when it's convenient for me, as opposed to it being like, oh, I actually want to take you out, and maybe you're going to be my girlfriend, we're going to connect. And that's the intentionality of our app, where everybody knows, okay, you're going to meet this person right away. And if you start off with saying, yeah, like I just want to have sex and I just sleep with you, that's great. But it's not like, oh, we matched. And then it's weird until it's convenient for one person.
I think it straight off the bat, like you said, there's a level of intentionality that comes along with it that no other app has. Of just going, taking you here at this time, this place, meet me there, and then we'll see what happens.
Right.
And as you said, in terms of not only the name, but like the ethos of the app, it's just for a drink. It's not grandiose. There's not a lot of pressure that comes along with one drink. If you fucking enjoy yourself, then go for the night. But just the least amount of pressure for meeting somebody in person so rapidly.
Yeah.
All right. Second differentiator.
So the second one was whenever I would speak to somebody, because I was comparing them and waiting for the time that was convenient to me, there was a lot of conversation. And which was fine at the time, where it's like, you're texting somebody for a week. And then when you finally meet them, it makes it more awkward, because when you meet somebody in real life, you could say like, hey, I'm Joe. Hey, I'm Hannah. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Australia. And then we could talk about Australia for an hour. We could talk about, what do you do? I'm a model. Tell me about your modeling career. Like, that's so fascinating. And it creates like really organic icebreakers, because it's just getting to know somebody. Getting to know somebody in the simplest form is an icebreaker, because there's so many questions to ask if you care. When you do that online, I already know who you are. I know where you're from. I know your job. I probably asked you about your family. I probably asked you your favorite color, your favorite number. When I meet you in person, we're then reversing all that, saying, oh, like, tell me about, your mom had a big operation the other day. Tell me about it. It's like, oh, it's so awkward. I just met you. You know about my mom's operation. Now we're talking about it. This is strange. I don't know if I feel comfortable telling you about this. Like, we haven't earned that trust
You're
yet.
like skipping steps of intimacy almost.
Yeah, or even like, oh, I know your favorite food is, croissant. Do you want to get a croissant tomorrow? It's like,
the way you say croissant is really funny. Anyway, go.
But it's just like, yeah, oh, that's so weird that you know all this already. Okay, yeah, sure. Like, I love the croissant from that place. But it just makes it like really weird.
Well, I think also to your point, like, it creates like a false sense of identity and a false sense of who that person is as well. You know what I mean? Like, even if they can give you all of this information, our minds are beautifully overactive in the sense that we can build somebody up. And whether that's in a positive way or a negative way, it can go either way, right? But I remember vividly, and like when you were saying that, something came to mind where I matched with this fella and we talked for like 2 weeks on Hinge. And through text and through things, I was like, oh my God, is this my husband? Like, he's witty, he's gorgeous, he's all these kind of things. And I met him in person and he had the personality of a fucking doorknob. And then I started to realize and recognize, oh, okay, so you spent X amount of time curating those answers so that you think that I would like you. And it felt so false. And I felt lied to. I felt
But it's
gypped.
also not their fault, because as human beings, we're hoping for the best. And when we have more time to hope for the best, we're building that person up from, okay, he's cute. Oh, he's funny. Oh, he's got a good job. Oh, he's asking me all these good questions.
I'm going to marry him.
And you start to build up like, this is literally the perfect person. To your point, they have all the time and tools to do that at their will and make themselves seem better. But it's both people's fault. It's them kind of being deceitful, but not purposely, and you building them up to be something that they're not. And that's one of the problems that falls into talking to somebody on an app. But getting back to the point, what is the differentiator number 2? And that is that our chats only open 24 hours before the date, which seems intimidating. Like, we get a lot of, I don't want to say pushback, but a lot of raised eyebrows of like, oh, wow, you can only chat 24 hours before the date. And when we explain it to them and break it down, then they're like more intrigued, where we're giving you time to feel comfortable. If you want to ask certain questions and make you feel comfortable, that's great. You have enough time, a whole day, to kind of vet that person. But it doesn't give you enough time to ramble and ask all these intimate questions. And it saves those for a first date. So when that person sends you the drink, time, and place, and then you go meet them, it's not so organic as compared to real life, but it's so organic compared to how dating apps currently work. And it just makes it a lot more comfortable. And I think it also makes it comfortable in the sense of you're going to actually be attracted to the energy and the feeling of being present with that person, not all the numbers and attributes they have on their dating profile. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is like push them to get in person as quickly, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
100%. I just want to side on this for the people, in particular women out there, who maybe hear that 24-hour time limit and go, oh my God, that's not enough time to vet safety. But we have worked so hard on ensuring the fact that there are so many levels of safety within the app. But also one of my favorite features of the app and the safety kind of features of it is the fact that when you get into the date, is it an hour into the date or 10 minutes into the date?
15
minutes into the day. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. We send you a notification saying, hey, are you okay? If not, you click a button and it sends a text to your emergency contact. So it's I think in a lot of ways, it's a hell of a lot safer than other apps, even though you only have 24 hours to be able to check.
Yeah, and I had this conversation with somebody a few months ago, and they brought this up, and I said, but think about it this way. This app is built for people who live in New York City, Los Angeles, Miami, like big cities where going to your local bar or any bar and meeting a stranger is really normal, you know? And I only built the app this way because I experienced it, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, of course I want women to feel safe. When you live in New York City as a woman and you go to a bar to meet a guy, which happens thousands of times every night, there's a million people around. Mm-hmm. And our app, like you said, knows where you are. Like our location is picked so that if you do have an issue, we know, okay, let's make this a safe zone for that person. But yeah, New York is confident, bold, and like you just go out and see what happens.
Okay, what's number 3?
Number 3 is that we only allow you to have one match per day, and they could only go out 7 days. So you have 7 days to set up a date, and at max you could have 1 date per day. So 7 dates at a time.
Which is a hell of a lot of dates throughout the week.
Yeah, which is a lot of dates. And like compare that to, like you said earlier, you get 60 matches per day on Hinge. 60 times 7 is 420 per week. You're going to miss good people. You're going to be overwhelmed. And you're just going to probably not want to talk to any of them because you're like, who do I talk to? When do I talk to them? And the reason I also did that is because 7 days doesn't give you enough time to back out. And that's what a lot of people do in today's world, especially with dating apps, is back out. They find a reason, why shouldn't I go on this date? Oh, this person isn't as tall as I thought. Or you know what? They live in a different area, and it's like you just find a reason not to go. So it's like we think focusing on one person at a time for 1 day, give them all your attention, take them out on a real date, and don't plan so far ahead where you're not going to care or it's going to lose its lust.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, I want to know from the founder himself. Can you stop looking at your phone, please?
Why?
Because we're talking to each other.
That's all right.
Rude. I want to know from the founder himself, do you have, and I know it's like picking children, but like, do you have a favorite out of those features?
Yeah, my favorite is picking the drink time and place because I think it shows as a guy a lot of initiative and a lot of like, I really value the time we're going to spend together and I'm going to set it up. And, you know, it's not a hierarchy thing. It's more of, yeah, I value this time. I'm going to show you that I care. And I think that's it. It shows you that I care. Like I'm putting a plan together, even though it makes it easy for me. I'm going to alleviate that stress for you. And I'm going to let you just focus on making yourself feel comfortable and showing up and having a good time.
I love that, darling.
Yeah.
I think my favorite, not that you asked, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. I think my favorite feature, it's really hard to choose, but I think the 24-hour chat box limit is my favorite because, as I said, like my stresses back in the day, I was like, I don't want to fucking talk to you that much. It really, really frustrates me. And then to your point earlier, it's just like so much of the magic is lost when you talk to somebody for days, weeks, months on end before you actually meet them. Cheers to that.
Just that. And that's kind of how our story came about because when I moved to LA, the app was already in the works. And I was like, you know what? I'm making this app, but I'm trying to be more intentional and use apps the right way. So I was a big fan of Hinge. I only used Hinge. But every time I matched with somebody, I asked them out right away. And as you know, dating in LA is a lot. Yes. These women were so impressed that I had a plan. I was like, hey, like I just matched with you. I want to take you out. And when you do that, it makes it easier for yourself, like we said earlier. And they were so appreciative that I actually valued who they were, asked good questions, and just treated it like a real organic date. And that's how we met.
That is how we met. And I think we've talked about it a couple of times, but I will, to your point just then, it was incredibly refreshing when we matched that day and you were like, okay, when can I take you out? And I remember going, okay, well, fuck, if he really wants to take me out, let's see if he'll take me out tonight. And the fact that you came back and like, yep, sweet, And I was like, am I vegan? You're like, fine, I'll find a vegan spot right around me. And it all came together within a 10-minute span. And it was so refreshing and it was so beautiful. And it was also, again, we've said this a couple of times, but like the fact that we are the accidental proof of concept, because it truly was accidental. Like who knew that we'd end up together and married based off of that one date, although it was a pretty fucking good first date. I just think that's why I feel so confident and comfortable preaching the method of first rounds and me, and with that encompasses all of those differentiators, because we know for a fact that it worked. If we think about the 3 key differentiators, we didn't chat we chatted for fucking 15 minutes, right? And the date was that day. You picked the drink and the time and the place.
Yep.
And it was, what's the last one again?
Well, that was our only date of the day.
Yeah, that was
it. My only
date
of the day.
the only date of the day. There you go. And so we got to a space where it was, we proved it within our own first date. And now to be able to continue on with the masses and explain to them why it works and go, here, like we are the example of it, I think is such a beautiful thing.
I think that matching with you is like the completion of a lot of things in my life, because obviously my goal was always to meet somebody, always to do it in an organic way. And I was building a company and I didn't know if it was going to work. I was like, yeah, this is what women say, this is what guys say, this is what they want. I was using Hinge that way and it was really nice to use that way, but I was like, is it actually going to work? And also what was refreshing for me was like the fact that it worked for you, somebody who was a Wilhelmina model who I'm sure had no problem meeting anybody on an app in real life. Like you could walk out of the house and go on a date. And the fact that, I don't want to say it worked on you, but that you enjoyed and
it appealed to me.
Yeah, that just made me feel like, wow, we're really on something here. That I had this idea, I got the feedback, I tried to be intentional in my own right and use it that way. It worked on somebody who I was actually really, really interested in. And then leading up after the date, it worked even more because our first date was so well. And I feel like that was such like a North Star moment of life.
I'm really glad, darling.
Yeah.
Well, I think we both understood the excitement and the joy that can come when you just like meet somebody in real life. And I think we probably both experienced not the disappointment, but the kind of resignation of like, oh, sometimes you meet people and they're not your cup of tea. But it's also such a beautiful thing just to be able to meet people in real life and make that decision rather than either building them up in your head or taking weeks and weeks and weeks and then being disappointed.
Yeah.
I just the response. I mean, I remember initially when you talked to me about the dating app, and I was like, listen, dating app market is incredibly saturated. And whilst I love the idea, are people going to be as spontaneous? Are people going to want to bring it back to that old school, beautiful way of dating as much as we want to? But after talking to people over the last couple of years, and especially as the app's developed, which is something that we'll get into in a second, but the response has just been so overwhelmingly positive. Like when you talk to somebody and you explain the key features, and granted we're very good salesmen, but we explain that, and then we also explain that we met in that way, and they're like, oh my God, you're the founder, but like these two people met and he's the one that created the app, and now they're out here preaching this type of thing, and now we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the app actively using it like that. It brings me so much joy to see you reach your dreams and to develop something that, is really near and dear to your heart, but to see other people's reactions is phenomenal. But
what are we also seeing right now? The new trend in the market is people want events. People want in-person interactions. People aren't stupid, right? So we had, what was it? Say 2012 to 2022. We had 10 years of us trying this concept, and people readjusted. They said, we want in-person meetings. And what does First Rounds on Me do? We push in-person meetings through a dating app, but then we are also throwing events to allow people to kind of have that variety, right? If you go to an event, there's maybe 10 people you like, and you could kind of organically talk to 10 people, but it's just refreshing to see human beings getting back to their roots and saying, okay, we don't really we understand that dating apps manipulate us in a way and switched our brains. We're going back to the basics, and we just want to be in person and make it real again. And I really love that. And I love that we were ahead of the curve, and we're still bridging our dates and our events with that concept.
Yeah, I think there was a correction that happened within society when they realized that the way that dating apps operated were not serving anybody. Like some people they might, right? And that's good and that's great, but I think the vast majority of people were fed up.
Well, you said 71%.
71% of Hinge, and that's wild to
And
me.
Hinge is a good app.
A great app.
I
We
love
met on
Hinge.
Hinge. We have nothing but wonderful things to say about Hinge. But there was this correction and this shift in society, especially post-COVID, where people were like, we want to be around each other. That fear is kind of gone.
COVID helped me.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because it gave me more time to focus on the app, but also it gave people that craving of, oh man, all I want to do is be in front of somebody. All I want to do is touch somebody. Like, we were not allowed to be in front of human beings for a year. Like, that's insane.
Made us realize how important that is. And then I think COVID mixed with the incessant use of technology that we have. We always have a fucking,
Well, that goes back to the mental health part of it.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing all of these people, all of these kids developing all of these mental health issues because, and I don't want to say it's directly tied to technology, but technology is not helping. So
well, I think it actually is. Like when I was doing research for this particular part, because obviously like I'm a very big advocate of mental health, and I'm also very hyper aware of how technology kind of contributes to it. And there was an article in Talkify in January of this year that said the overuse of dating apps and media in general is linked to increased anxiety and depression. The constant comparison, fear of rejection, the superficial nature can negatively impact mental health. Many users are finding that in-person interactions are more fulfilling and less stressful.
Yeah, and I think COVID probably solidified all that, and I hope it keeps going that way. I just don't know how. I don't know how we'll fully get off of the social media addiction, because people do love the gamification, and I think the gamification makes it exciting, but the social media side of the comparison and the actual addiction of looking at the phone, no matter what you're looking at, you can be looking at cats, but if you're looking at the phone for an extended period of time, you lose touch with how to speak to a human being, how to look a human being in the eyes. And that is what leads to a connection, if that's what you're looking for.
Oh, 100%. I think that, but I think as a society, we're becoming wiser. It's like the society of people who are within dating apps and getting sick of the way that things are going. Stop tapping the microphone. People are wising up to it. People are recognizing and realizing the impact that it's having on their mental health. Like, I know a lot of people who are like, they put timers on their phones for social media now, you know what I mean? And not doom scrolling, not absorbing this excessive amount of, frankly, just drivel that numbs our brains and that numbs the way that we operate. People want the same vein that people want to get back out into in-person interactions. They want to get back to in-person interactions in every realm of life.
Yeah, and I was on the phone with my friend the other day. He's married with a few kids in New York. And I was telling him about the app, and he's like, oh, it's so cool. And I was like, and he said, where's the app going? And I said, well, the app's not going to be a dating app. The app's going to be used for everyone. It's going to be more of a social app, but a social app in the sense of like physically social. And he said, what do you mean by that? And I said, when's the last time you asked your wife on a date? He was like, oh, I don't know. Like, we have kids. It's difficult. I said, exactly. I said, imagine your wife's out right now with the kids. You're working. Imagine you sent her a date, like a date request through an app. And she got an alert saying, Mike wants to take you out for dinner at this restaurant tonight at 8 o'clock. What do you think she would do? He was like, oh man, she would love that. And I was like, why do dating apps or social apps have to be tied to single people? Why can't married couples use it? Why can't friends use it? Think about if, I'm in LA, you're in New York. We're like, oh, when I come back to New York, let's get a coffee. Yeah, sure. When? I don't know. We'll touch base when I get there. I'll get there. He'll be busy. I'll be busy. We won't see each other. What if I sent him a meeting, like a friend date? Hey, let's get a coffee Friday, 8 o'clock. I see your availability. You see my availability. It's there, and we do it, and it pushes us as friends to get a coffee in real life. And he was like, oh, that's amazing. My point being, not everything is tied to singles. This is what I want the world to see. The world, couples, family members, friends need to start being in person and stop being so digital.
I'm in awe of those words. I think that's so beautiful. And I completely agree. I think it's like there's so many facets that people need, that in-person interaction, that face-to-face. And on behalf of the people of the world, I thank you for creating the app. All right, my darling. So to round out this lovely podcast, I want to talk about kind of like the reflections of what's going on and the future vision of First Rounds of Me. So what do you think the most rewarding part of the journey for both of us has been thus far?
The most rewarding part is working with you, which is awesome, but like seeing it work. You know, we've had a success story, a marriage, which is so cool. And we're going to have a guest on when we're in New York who said that Fresh Rounds and Me's changed her life. And those are the things that make me really happy. So seeing how it impacts people and how it's helping people connect is really what I've enjoyed most about this journey. And then where it's going, I just hope that it builds to where not everybody's dependent on Fresh Rounds and Me, but everybody uses it as their tool to connect with whoever it is. Like we said, their wife, their parent, their friend, or someone they want to date.
If you could highlight one thing, and I'm not talking about like a feature, but just like one thing from our app that you want our users to take away, what would it be?
To use it intentionally. Like when it asks you what you're looking for, take that question serious. If you're looking for marriage, don't be embarrassed of that. Like, that's great that you're looking for marriage, because if you find somebody else who's looking for marriage, then you guys are off to a great start. You're both on the same mission. If you want to just have fun for the night, say that, because then you'll meet somebody. There'll be the same expectation and there won't be a letdown. It's like, hey, I want to have fun tonight. Yeah, I also want to have fun tonight. I'm sure you guys have a great night. And then there'll be no awkward, oh, I'm actually looking for this. You're looking for that. We shouldn't have done this. And I think that's the key takeaway I want to have, is use this dating app with intentionality.
Love that. What advice would you give to someone who is struggling with the current state of the dating world right now?
The advice that I would give them is to just put yourself out there and to realize that you're not as awkward or as I want to say unattractive, not physically, but not as unattractive as you think. Like, confidence is key, and just put yourself out there. And if it's a bad date, who cares?
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. I would say that like everybody's so beautifully unique, quirks and all, and there will be someone out there that finds you just as hilarious and delicious as you want to be felt. You know what I mean? So I agree. Like, you have to put yourself out there. You have to put yourself in the positions.
I think that your mom and stepdad is like a great example, because like, imagine you're like, oh, I like Star Wars and, you know, I'm X years old, divorced. You know, there's probably not many people for me, but there was. Like, they both love Star Wars. They're both divorced. And it's like, there's always somebody for somebody.
100%. Well, let's talk about that, because my mum and my stepfather actually met on a dating app. An over 50s dating app, which I think is like such a beautiful thing in this day and age, considering we kind of like associate dating apps with like a bit of a younger demographic, right?
Yeah.
And they did the same thing where they talked for a little bit, and my mum drove 2 hours to go and have lunch with him, and they meant to have like an hour date. It turned into like a 5-hour date.
Just because of Star Wars.
Not all because of Star Wars, but Star Wars was a main contributing factor. But it bleeds into every area of our life, I feel, when we look around it. All right, last one. How can listeners of the podcast get started with the app and join the community that we've created?
Yeah, so like all of our podcasts, there's a link in the show notes. You could find it on the App Store and check out our website. Our website has really great tools for people to understand dating better from your blogs. Your blogs cover a wide range of things, whether you're married, you know, sexual tips. I feel like
in relationships, if you're going through breakups, if you're looking for general dating advice, do's and don'ts, like I try to cover a wide-ranging amount of topics. With the blog.
And exciting news that the app is now national. So we've gone from 12 cities to national, so you could download it wherever you want.
We also just went through a massive rebrand, which I know we don't want to talk about too many of like the new exciting features that are coming out.
This is about dating apps. This is not about rebranding.
It's about that's part of the dating app. It looks real pretty. Go and check it out. But yeah, and also come to our in-person events. Yeah. We're having so many of them around the country, and
those are only catered to certain cities. LA, New York, Austin, and Miami. But if you're in those cities, check out one of our events.
Please come along. You never know. Joe and I might be at one.
Awesome. Well, thanks, babe.
Thank you, darling.
Happy dating.
Happy dating.